the interesting part about how she had to always know her place as a wife. And there's a lot in that. We've already done 2 episodes talking about relationships and but that was really interesting, the dynamic, where she couldn't appear to be smarter than her husband, or like he was just not, he couldn't take that. And then there was her role as a mother. We've already talked about motherhood and parenting. So there's a lot of ways we can go. And then there was her circle of friends. So where do you guys want to go for this one? There's always more to talk about, I find, with relationships and parenting. Hi everyone, my name is Suki and I'm an author, writer and researcher, and I'd like to welcome you to the Sisters of Light podcast, which is a production of Lineage. This podcast looks at the lives of incredible women in Christian history and delves into their significance and relevance to us in our lives today. Now, you may have heard of Henry VIII, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Today we're looking at the one who survived. Her name was Catherine Parr, and she was an incredible witness for Jesus. Joining me are 3 equally incredible women. I have Charlene Kute, Chingy Bloom, and Aiko Ramdin, and we can't wait for you to join us on this incredible adventure. We hope that you are blessed. All right, so this episode is Catherine Parr, who has the unfortunate honor of being one of Henry VIII's 6 wives, right? So there's that poem, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. She's the one who survived. And so Catherine Parr was born in 1512 in Westmoreland in England. And she was born to an influential family again. Her parents were courtiers. Her mum, Maud Parr, was quite progressive. She believed in the education of her daughters as well as her sons. And she created, because I know in a previous episode we were talking about homeschooling, she created a homeschool co-op for her daughters and her sons that met at her home. And she made sure that her daughters were educated, and not just like at the time. So Catherine Parr was born in about 1512. At the time in England, a young lady, a noble young lady, lesser nobility, was expected to know how to be a good wife and a mother. But Catherine's mother made sure that her daughters were educated above that. And so Catherine was married very young to Edward Burgh, and then that's when she moved north to Lincolnshire. And within a few years, he died, and according to the dower contract, she got a small income, but she was quite a little bit impoverished. She had 2 siblings whom she was very close to, Anne and William. But then she married up. Her second marriage was to, his name has totally slipped my mind, Lord Latimer. And she married Lord Latimer. Latimer was from the affluent Latimer family. And she then moved to Snape Castle. So instead of living in a hall, she was now living in the castle. And Lord Latimer had a large and extended family. He had some relational ties back to the House of York back in the day, so he was very rich, and which also meant that he should look after all his many relatives because he was the oldest in the family. Catherine's first husband was Protestant. Then Lord Latimer was Catholic. And so there's some, just a bit of murkiness surrounding when she actually accepted the Reformation. When Lord Latimer died, within a few months, I think it was 4 or 6 months, Henry VIII had proposed to her. And by this time, you have to think about this, Henry VIII had just finished beheading his 5th wife. And he was now in his late 40s, pushing 50. And the previous wife, also named Katherine, had been like 16 or 17.
Right.
And he beheaded her. And then he comes up to this Catherine and she's like, well, will you marry me? She actually hemmed and hawed. She was like, but like saying no was never an option.
Right. Not to the king.
You don't say no to that king. I mean, you don't say no to any king, but you don't say no to that king.
You might not be a dead wife. You might be a dead head.
And also there was a family to think about, because if you became Queen of England, then you can ennoble your family, right? So she eventually, Henry VIII and Catherine Parr were married on the 12th of July, 1544, I believe, 1544 or 1545, at Hampton Court Palace in the Queen's Closet. And she actually took to being a queen quite well, quite naturally. One of the interesting things about her is she loved shoes and she loved perfume. And so she had this closet full of shoes. And anyway, so she also became stepmother. She didn't have children by this point. She was stepmother to Lord Latimer's 2 kids, and then she became stepmother to Henry's royal children. He had 3 children from 3 different wives. And Elizabeth and Edward were quite young at this time. Mary was close to Catherine's age. Catherine was 30 when she got married, and close to 30 when she got married. And Mary was 27. So her step, the age gap. Catherine, I think some historical reports say through Thomas Cranmer, she was influenced most strongly towards the Reformation. And she started translating scripture in her rooms. So Erasmus had published what was called the Paraphrases, which is basically the full Gospels. He translated them from the originals into Greek, and she started translating them from Greek into English. She also wrote a book, which she published after Henry died. And so she loved the idea of righteousness by faith and justification by faith. And she had a massive influence on Elizabeth and Edward. And they became Protestant because of her. She employed the best Protestant tutors from Cambridge. She really just influenced them. She loved them because Elizabeth's mother was beheaded when she was very young, I think 2. And Edward's mother died in childbirth. So they never really had a mother figure in their life. And Catherine just took to that, she nurtured them. And then towards the latter stage of Henry's life, there was this plot against her. Catherine patronized Anne Askew. Anne Askew came to her rooms. She loved listening to her preach. And I think there was this sense of she had this group of really strong Protestant friends. And then they had this really strong Protestant women preaching to us because it was kind of a girls' club, right? And but of course, there was a lot of politics around the throne. I think when we talked about Anne Askew, I briefly mentioned this. Henry was getting ready to die. Edward was decidedly Protestant. There was a Protestant and Catholic factions at the court. And the Catholic faction decided that they needed to incriminate the queen in order to take her down. Basically, what's another queen? So many have been beheaded. Let's get rid of her. And so they tried to use Anne Askew, but Anne didn't give up the names. So then they fabricated a charge against the queen. And one night, Dr. Wendy, the king's personal physician, came and told her that I found this bill of attainder against you. The king is going to arrest you. And Catherine freaks out. And what had happened was, so everybody else, Stephen Gardiner, Thomas Risley, Richard Rich, these were the Catholic faction. They wanted to take her down. But you couldn't tell Henry what to do. So they waited for the opportune moment, which happened when one day Catherine and Henry were having a debate, right? And they were having this theological discussion and she was into it. So she was debating him and they were talking about religion and he got really offended. And he said something to the effect of, well, it's a good day when a man's wife presumes to, educate him. And he was not happy. And Gardiner saw that as an opening and he poisoned Henry's mind. Well, she's getting too big for her britches. Might be a good time to... So Catherine realized what was happening, that this wasn't about religious liberty. This wasn't about standing for her faith. This was just about appeasing a man's ego. So you know what she did? She took 2 of her ladies in waiting and she goes into his chamber and she says, it was me you know what, you are so smart and you're so amazing and I totally overstepped. And the reason I overstepped is because you're so sick and I was just trying to make you feel better. And I'm so sorry. And then Henry's like, oh, was that all it was? You weren't trying to be, you weren't trying to put me in my place. And she was like, no, never. Oh, then I forgive you and we'll be perfect friends. And the whole plot was thwarted on that. It wasn't even principle, right? And then Henry dies January the following year. Catherine outlives him. Finally, Catherine marries the love of her life, Thomas Seymour, who was a bit of a dodgy character if you read about him. She marries him and she has a child, a daughter, but she dies of childbed fever. And then the daughter was raised by friends. And so that's her life. There's a lot there, right? Again, the interesting part about how she had to always know her place as a wife. And there's a lot in that. We've already done 2 episodes talking about relationships and but that was really interesting, the dynamic, where she couldn't appear to be smarter than her husband, or like he was just not, he couldn't take that. And then there was her role as a mother. We've already talked about motherhood and parenting. So there's a lot of ways we can go. And then there was her circle of friends. So where do you guys want to go for this one? There's always more to talk about, I find, with relationships and parenting.
I know. Immediately I thought, husbands love your wives and wives respect your husband.
Yes.
And the need for women to feel loved.
Yes.
And a husband to feel respected.
Right.
I think that could be a whole season. Not just an episode.
That's true, right?
It made me think of Nabal.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And Abigail.
Yes, that's a great
because
story.
He is a little bit like Henry VIII.
Just
just kind of moody and despotic and just, kind of a cantankerous person.
Yes.
And the wife kind of has to placate his ego and smooth things out, the problems that he's created. Right. Kind of fix things.
Yeah.
So, that's what it made me think of.
I literally pulled that story up, Abigail, Nabal, and David.
Yeah.
And you see the traits of Abigail, having wisdom, discernment, humility to a certain extent.
Yes.
And that's definitely how she was portrayed.
But where's the line between being kind of greasing these
or to save your life
up, and is that weak? Is that when is that weak and when is that?
I was listening to this podcast once, and the husband was like, it was really interesting. He was like, it's true that wives should be submissive, but and he was American. He was like, my wife wasn't a worm. She squeaked if I stepped on her. And he's like, I needed that. And I thought it was really interesting, but I think we need to talk about that. Like in Abigail and, in Abigail's case and also in Catherine Parr's case, getting married to these men, I don't think they had much choice. Right? And so, when they were in an impossible situation, they were wise.
And there were other things at stake.
Right. Other things at stake, and they were really discerning. But I think, if you're in a relationship before you get married and you are having a discussion with your boyfriend or and they don't like it if they feel like you're outshining them, or that's a flag, right?
Yeah,
red
flag. Major
cut
red
that
flag.
right, right off at the roots, right? Because if you feel like, if they feel like you can't spread your wings and be yourself, and they're like, if you're going to be like this, then you got to cut that thing right off.
Sure. If you feel squashed or hindered in a dating relationship, you better be sure that your wings are going to get clipped as soon as marriage happens. Right. You're not suddenly going to find a greater freedom because you think you've locked him down. And that's just the issue. It's just he's trying to control me. I'm going to control him.
Right. No.
And it's just it's not a loving, reciprocal relationship. And I think with, I guess, Catherine's situation and Abigail's, they were probably, it's different society where women couldn't advocate for themselves as we can today. Right. We're in a very blessed time of history, I guess. But I think across the board, having wisdom and discernment to know how to not just survive. I guess survival for them was like a little bit more imperative.
Right.
But even still, just because we can choose who we want to be with.
Yes.
You don't want to just survive marriage
or
you want
relationship.
To thrive in it. You want to
in
thrive in your relationships and not always have to be using your wisdom just to, get by and keep your head above water.
Right.
And I think that's the difference. Like, you can choose relationships where you will always have to be trying to survive.
Yes.
Or you can make choices when you have the opportunity. Probably off the backs of all of these women who have actually stood up throughout history.
Yes.
To actually advocate for yourself when it counts.
Yes.
So that you can actually, stay true to who you are, know your identity, and thrive in these relationships.
Yes.
And I think that's what God intends.
That's what
more
God
than
intends.
Anything. Yeah.
I think thriving is the key, right? Like when God created Eve, he created her from Adam's side. I was reading in the book Patriarchs and Prophets, he didn't create her from, his heel. She wasn't meant to be trampled. He didn't create her from Adam's head. She wasn't meant to rule over him, but she was supposed to be an equal, to be loved and protected. And I think that's beautiful. And I think love and protect, there is definitely mutual respect, but there's never diminishing of one person or the other.
Yeah.
That's really important.
And also, I think King Henry VIII, if he was threatened by her, that shows that he wasn't maybe fully secure in his own self.
Right.
And when you're looking for a good relationship, especially long-term relationship, you need two whole people.
Yes. Two whole people. Yes.
Coming together rather than, people who are not sure of themselves.
Sure of themselves. Yeah. Because otherwise it becomes really like, and I like what Charlene was saying before, like, because once you're married, like, it's not about locking him down and getting married, because once you're married, it's like
he'll give you no power.
No, he will lock you down because you need to feel like you can be yourself, even if being yourself is, and I get this a lot when I travel. People always ask me, how does, people always ask me, boy, it must be really something else in your home. How does your husband argue with you? Like, because I'm out there preaching, and I always smile about it, but I always think it's because, as a woman, I'm in a different role than most women are. I'm preaching or I'm teaching or I'm writing, and my husband is quietly supportive. You've all met him. He's quietly supportive, right? And so there's this sense that you're larger than life and your husband has a weaker personality. No, he's got a strong personality. He's just a man that's not afraid to have a wife who's
exactly. He can support you because he's not threatened.
Right, he's not threatened,
and he celebrates you. Yes, and he upholds you, and he knows that that's his job.
Yes.
And then if things go wrong, you've got someone that you can go home to. And I think if you're always trying to tear each other down, like, you can't be the person that, you can't have that in a relationship. It's not reciprocal.
Right. You can't, because then you are not able to, you can't be what God intended you to be.
Exactly.
Because a marriage is supposed to help you to reach your fullest potential. And, can you help each other reach your fullest potential in Jesus? And if somehow that marriage is capping you so that you can't be and do what God created you to be and do, then that's not a healthy relationship. Like we just said, cut that thing right off. Don't let it progress to marriage,
Right.
If you're in a dating relationship.
And what happens if you have found yourself in a marriage that's like that?
Right, that's a good question.
What do you do in the
pray?
Not that I am. I'm not. I just want to put that in there. I'm not. But just to put it out there, because we don't.
There's going to be yes.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting because I look at even us or a lot of my friends, the wives and the husbands, they're like chalk and cheese.
Yes.
So, for example, you just said
we are
outgoing, not outgoing. But also when you think about the skills or the spiritual gifts that God has blessed us with, like my husband and myself, we are very different but very the same. So we have the same purpose in life, the same mission, the same goals. But people would say I'm a bit more talkative than him. He's definitely more creative than me. He's excellent at teaching and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm all right at bringing people. So when we do ministry together, it's like, okay, Chingy will get the people. Ashley will, then teach the people. and it makes a really, really beautiful unit.
Right.
And I think when people are thinking about, you know, getting together with their lifelong partner, number one should really be, what is ministry? Like, what will our ministry be like? And then obviously all the other stuff as well.
But we will come back to Charles' question. What if you do find yourself in a marriage where you don't have the capacity to grow? What can you do? We'll come back to that in the next segment. So we'll wrap up our segment here, but we will come back to that when we're back for the second segment.
The greatest story ever told began with a war in heaven, reached its climax at the cross, and finds its culmination through the historical narrative of the Church. If there was only one book you could read to understand the epic struggle between Christ and Satan, it should be this one. The illustrated Great Controversy takes you on an unforgettable journey through the tragedies and triumphs of the Church, drawing you inexorably onward to the great finale of this earth's history, Jesus returning for those he loves. The book features QR codes directly linked to short videos summarizing each chapter, along with discussion questions which can be used to facilitate personal reflection or small group discussion. Our website also features chapter summaries and historical articles linked to the book, which are designed to enhance your reading experience. Don't wait. Go ahead and grab your copy today from lineagejourney.com/shop.
Hi everyone, my name is Suki and I'm the author of Bringers of the Dawn, A Journey Through the Reformation, which is actually a collaborative project produced by the Lineage Journey team. This book is a compilation of over 40 study guides exploring the Reformation. There's pictures, QR codes, study guide questions. It's great for personal devotions or even a small group Bible study. You can find this at our Lineage Journey website on www.lineagejourney.com/shop. So head on over there and grab your copy today. All right. So we're back for this second segment. We left off the last segment. We're talking about Catherine Parr. We talked about her marriage dynamic with Henry VIII, how he was quite overbearing. He couldn't handle her being intellectual, or, he basically felt threatened by her. And so we looked at, how you want to cut that right off if you're in a dating relationship. But Charlene asked a really good question. What do you do if you find yourself in a marriage relationship and you have this dynamic? Mm-hmm. And so let's get into that. And I think before we get into that, the first thing we want to say is none of us are professional counselors. So we don't have all the answers. We're here to discuss. I think one of the things that we want to do with this podcast is ask questions and encourage you all to ask questions and share our experiences, but mostly get discussions going, get people thinking, right? So if you are in a difficult situation, I think seek help.
Yeah.
Right? That's really important. But I think we will share some of our input that might be helpful. Does anybody want to jump in with that? I think, okay, so first of all, there's two kinds of, so there's one kind of relationship where it's just that the male partner or the husband might be just insecure. So there's no physical violence involved. Mm-hmm. They might just be emotionally or verbally abusive. So they put you down, they belittle you, or there's this expectation of, well, now you're the wife, so you can't, your role now is to support me, whatever I do. You can't have a life of outside your own, outside of us. You can't have an identity outside of us. So there's that. And then there's, where that situation has just devolved into something that's physically abusive. Mm-hmm. I think, Chingy, you want to share something?
I was going to say, for the first situation,
yes,
Proverbs 14:1 came to mind.
Yes.
The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish pulls it down with her hands. And for the first point of call would just be to go to God and ask for wisdom. Be still and know that He is in control.
Yes.
And that if you're in the situation, He has actually got a plan to bring you out of it. There's so many scriptures on wisdom. Proverbs 3:15, wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. And even when you're thinking about another proverb in the next chapter, chapter 4, verse 6, don't turn your back on wisdom. She will protect you, love her, and she will guard you.
Yep.
So there's so much emphasis
Yes.
put on wisdom.
Yes.
And as we spoke about wisdom a few episodes back,
yes,
you know, when God asked Solomon, what do you want? I'm obviously paraphrasing.
Yes. Yes.
but Solomon said wisdom, and God was pleased, and He gave him wisdom and everything more.
Right.
And I think when we take the time to go to God and actually ask, you know, God, please give me wisdom for the situation, teach me, show me.
Yes.
And sometimes we actually need rebuking, like rebuke me, like search my heart, oh God, you know, Psalms 139.
Yep.
Because not sometimes, all the time, God will give us the answer.
Yep. I think that's a good place to start. Pray, right? Because there's nothing that prayer can't do. And I think too often we jump into something without enough prayer, right?
So true.
So I think the first step is pray. God knows your situation better than anybody else does. God knows your heart. God knows your husband's heart. God knows the circumstances you're in, your individual baggage. He understands the dynamic. So
there's
pray.
Nothing He can't do.
That's right. And there's nothing He can't do. So I think if you pray with a sincere, earnest heart, you know, Jeremiah 29, I think 13, it says, call upon me and I will answer you, right? And so I think God wants us to seek Him.
Yeah, with our whole heart.
Yeah. Right? And there's nothing that He can't do. So pray. There's nothing that prayer can't do. I think the other step would be after you've prayed, like really prayed, not like a 2-minute prayer and then jump into it. Just spend a season of time in prayer. If you have a friend that you can trust, that, like, you know, Charlene was sharing where you had a friend that, you know, just galvanized you and sent you back. So I think if you have a friend like that you know will help build up your marriage, not tear it down, where they will be a positive influence, share it with them and pray together, you know? Because sometimes it's kind of good to be outside of your own head with somebody that you trust, with somebody that's safe, because they can help you to see things that you might not be able to, especially if they want to kind of build up your marriage. So I think pray together, spend a considerable amount of time in prayer.
Accountability.
Accountability is also good. But I think then just having a conversation, you know, having a conversation. And I was listening to something where it talks about, you know, when you have a conversation, it's really important. You know, sometimes when you have a conversation, it's easy to go, so you're doing this, and because you're doing this, this, and just make that other person feel like you're the problem. And so an easier way to begin the conversation is, I am feeling, and, you know, I'm feeling, and you turn it back on yourself. You know, this is how I'm feeling. This is where I'm at. This is where I would feel like I would like to. So that, you know, that kind of language immediately shifts the blame subtly from the other party to yourself, and it diffuses a potentially volatile situation.
Yeah.
Right?
I think defensiveness is always the biggest thing that ends up happening, and it makes you both sides irrational.
Right.
And then you start to just speak feelings rather than actually hearing what the other person is saying.
Yes.
But I think also, like, a good standpoint is Proverbs 4:23. It says, keep your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. Another version says, out of it are the issues of life. Like, guard your heart above all else.
Yes.
And I think that it's so important, whatever the situation is, that you do guard your heart.
Yes.
Know what's true, know what your values are, know your worth in Christ. That's a big thing. So often times that you feel, you know, self-worth issues can play into just accepting negative behavior and then almost thinking that you're to blame or you're not worth more. So, you know, this is just my lot in life, you know, and it doesn't help build you up because it's not the truth at all. But it also doesn't allow your relationship to grow either. If you're continually enabling in many ways because you can't find the voice to advocate for yourself. And it's very difficult sometimes to, I don't think I grew up with the best vocabulary to advocate for myself. And I don't think my husband will mind me sharing that the first few years of our marriage, I just stuffed because I was just like, well, I feel like I'm sharing it in my body language. I'm just, can't you see? Isn't it obvious? And it wasn't because I just didn't have the vocabulary to actually speak up. And I internalized so much. Yes. And when I actually wrote it down, or I wrote in a diary for 5 hours or something. And then I handed it to him and he read it. And he's like, why didn't you just say? Yes. Why couldn't you speak? And I praise God for being with a godly man who's willing to change and do that. He was just like, why didn't you say? And I was like, well, I felt like I did. Yes. But the truth is I absolutely hadn't learned the vocabulary. And we went through a season of, doing marriage counseling where, the therapist was like, okay, so she'd ask a question and he would answer. And then she'd be like, okay, Charlene, what did he say? And I'd have to repeat back. And she was like, okay, yeah, you picked up this and this and this, but he actually said this, this, and this. Right. And I was like, oh, I missed that. Because sometimes you hear what you want to hear.
I like that.
And then she asked me another question and she was like, okay, so what did she say? And he said, da, 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 da. She's like, actually, you missed this point, this point, this point. So it really highlighted the fact that you can be communicating. And I think we always talk about, it's one of the biggest things that someone will say at a wedding, make sure you communicate. Right. Don't go to sleep on your anger. Da, da, da. Right. But what does that actually mean? Real communication isn't just words. No. It's an intuitive understanding where you actually desire to understand their inner soul, you know? You can be, you can be in a relationship, but in terms of being soulmates, I feel like that word has been romanticized and Disney-fied too much. Yes. But why was that word even coined as a phrase? Understanding somebody's soul is being able to see them. Right. In the Bible where you see the word, the Hebrew word, but it says, and Adam knew his wife Eve and she conceived yada. Yes. And then I think it's nosko in the Greek. Nosko, yeah. If you just unpack what that word means, English language is absolutely rubbish. Yeah. But it's that seeing and deeply knowing of a person. Yes. That I think we need to strive towards in marriage. And that's where real communication comes. And you start to notice when it's surfaced. So whereas I think so far as you can feel safe in a relationship to do so, obviously if it's an abusive situation, that's another conversation. That's a different conversation, yes. But if it's not, abusive and you can actually work with somebody, pray for wisdom for sure. Yes. And then approach it, I think, from a desire to actually understand each other and advocate for yourself. Right. And it may be messy to start off with. My therapist just said, speak what's on your mind, Char. Don't stew over it for a week and then it just comes out with verbal diarrhea and then he's blasted. Right. And it was ugly to start off with. Right. I didn't know how to speak in a way that was pleasant. But as you learn and your partner's gracious with you, you both can learn a conversational dynamic that works and allows you to grow, where you can feel that you can speak to each other. Right. And I think there's so much that I want to pick up, on what you said. I think the first thing is sometimes we listen through the lens of our own trauma. So we listen through the lens of our own sense of inadequacy, our own feelings, our own insecurities. And so I do that. In our relationship, it's the same. So sometimes we'll be talking and my husband will say something. And through my own insecurities, I'm hearing. And so then when I say, this is what you said. And he's like, no, that's not what I said. This is what I said. And then I'll say, no, but this is what you meant. He's like, no, that's not what I meant. This is what I said. And I meant the same thing. What you're hearing is different.
What you're hearing.
Yeah. Yes. We have these internal filters, right? And it's not what anybody else is saying. Right. It's just what happens in our brain. And I think
that's that lens. You're listening through the lens of your own trauma, your own baggage. And sometimes I remember we were going through a really difficult season in our marriage. Very difficult season. And that season lasted a few years. Mm-hmm. And I remember during that season, there were times when we would talk late into the night. trying to unpack why we were going through this, you know? And it was this ongoing thing that, you know, had to do with a bunch of different circumstances. And I remember we would just talk. And sometimes it's almost like you're talking in circles, but you need to talk it out because, like I said, you know, it's his filter, his own, you know, his own filters, his own trauma, his own personality, and then my filters. And you need to like talk it through till you penetrate through all those filters and you're actually hearing. And a lot of the times what you're hearing and what they're saying are completely different things. And then when you finally get onto the same page, then the actual conversation begins. And so I think conversation is key. Understanding that your hearing, we all have hearing problems, you know? Yeah. Our hearing can be jaded, but also keeping at it.
Yes.
You know, not giving up because, oh, this is too hard. You're not getting it. I'm not getting it. Bang. Just keep at it till you peel back all those layers and you get to the real nub of the problem. Yeah.
But what about like Catherine Parr?
Yeah.
And
even
Nabal?
Yeah. They couldn't do that.
I feel like that's not kind of the same
they couldn't
level.
Do that. No.
And where do you find the line of like what is workable?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
What if that's there's something that's kind of borderline? I'm not sure if it's workable. What do you do if it's not workable?
Right. So how do you? Okay. So if you're so what you're asking
is there any time that like Catherine Parr,
where you're
maybe she was not able
diffuse
to
the situation,
have really communicate
she
well,
right? She couldn't
two ways with her husband, but she had a greater purpose,
right?
She found solace in
and I feel like I'm sure she did have to draw boundaries, but she still stayed for a different purpose.
That's a good point.
I don't know where that judgment call is.
I think discernment has a big part in it as well. So like wisdom, you have wisdom, but then you have the discernment of when to exercise the wisdom. And for example, you know, when your husband comes straight in from work,
right?
Probably not the best
time to talk about it.
Yeah, probably after they've eaten some food. You made them some good food.
Isn't that the truth, right? Yeah.
That's not considered greasing up.
But I think what Aiko is raising is a good point. What if you're in a marriage and you're committed to that marriage? It is not physically abusive, but it's just not at a place where you can have these profound discussions right away, right? How do you begin to at least work towards that? Is that what you're asking?
Something like that, or is there any circumstances where maybe you don't get divorced, but maybe you need to separate and draw boundaries that way
for a time?
If there's emotional abuse, if there's spiritual abuse.
Because it's not always just physical abuse. It's emotional, I think spiritual, verbal.
I think spiritual abuse and emotional abuse. Verbal abuse is bad. But I think the really deep ones are the spiritual abuse and the emotional abuse as well, you know? I mean, verbal abuse is also quite deep.
And maybe that's where circle of friends comes in too.
Yes.
Maybe her circle of friends like bore her up and helped her through.
Yes. Yes. And I think, you know, what you're saying about maybe there's a time to like, it's difficult. And maybe there's a time to separate, you know. And I think maybe that might be a good time to say, hey, maybe we need to go get some marriage counseling. You know, where one person calls it and they're like, you know, this is how I'm feeling and maybe we need to go get some marriage counseling. Because I think there's no shame in getting help, right? There's we should
Absolutely
let's destigmatize that right now, right? Destigmatize it. If you need help, go get help.
Yeah.
There is nothing shameful or wrong about that. Everybody in every season goes through rough patches. And if you can find a good Christian counselor that has the same values that you do, they can help you. I love what Shah shared, you know, how your therapist helped you to see things that you couldn't see before. And so maybe that's that. But I also like the idea of boundaries, like where you're able to say, you know what, I need to draw some really clear boundaries. Like I can't accept this behavior. I can't, if you're going to, if you're going to continue with this behavior, then these are going to have to be the consequences of that. Yeah. Sometimes we need to do that.
It's a bit like bullies, because sometimes bullies, they bully people through their own past trauma.
Yes.
And they continue doing it because no one stands up to them. So they think that they can get away with it.
Right.
But once someone actually stands up to them, their course will reflect and probably think, okay, this is not that they don't know it's bad.
Yes.
But then actually stop.
Yeah.
But until you're actually confronting what the issue is.
Yes.
And using the voice that God has blessed us with.
Yeah.
You can't expect different things if you're continuing to do the same.
Right. And Henry VIII was a bully. What she did, what Catherine Parr did, was just give in, fold to the bully. But that's not healthy.
No, it's not going. It didn't resolve anything, did it? It diffused.
It just saved her life.
Yeah, but it didn't resolve. And I think having practical ways forward, if you are in a relationship where even it might be as sticky as you like, if you're willing to work and you have that space, I think we were given an exercise that I thought was super practical. So it said to start with strengths. Write a document. Write it down.
Yes.
So you start with strengths. Write the strengths about your partner, what you admire about their personality, and the things that you admire and think are great. And then next, write your concerns about the relationship and write them out, whatever points you need, illustrate them as much as you need, but you're writing, so you have the time and space to do that. And then write your, what makes you tick, what and things that don't.
Yes.
And you write those things down and you both do it for yourself and share that document with each other and then discuss them. And then she said to prayerfully come together and find ways and resolutions to address the concerns. Because sometimes we think we've said so many things, but until it's written on paper and it's, set in stone, as it were, it's not practical. And then prayerfully work towards that, addressing the things in those documents and the things that makes them tick. Try a little bit more, if they need affirming or if they need certain things, just try those things. It goes a long way to diffusing situations. So just to put some practical things out there that's helped us personally. And I don't think there's anything wrong, like you said, with getting help. No. I think there's biblical precedence for that too. If you've got an issue with somebody, go speak to them to their face. Yes. If it's not working, bring somebody else in who's a safe space. Yeah, exactly. So I think if we did that more, we'd get through a lot more.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd resolve things a lot more.
And a lot more effectively.
Yeah.
All right, so our time's up. I want to close with James 1 verse 5, where it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God that giveth to all men and women liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. I think pray, like Chingy was saying at the beginning, pray. Ask God for wisdom to know how best to move forward. Do you need to set boundaries? Do you need to have a conversation? Do you need to go for counseling? What do you need? So pray and ask God for wisdom. And I think that's the most important thing to begin with. Yeah. Michael, can you close us with prayer?
Sure. Let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you for this story of this strong woman. Catherine Parr was really admirable in many ways. Strong mother figure to even children who are not her own. And she recognized her destiny and just how much influence she could exert in her role. Please help us to understand our place as well. And if we are in a sticky situation like she was, help us to have the wisdom to know what to do next. And no matter what relationships we have, give us the wisdom. You promise it. Like we just read in James 1:5, give us the wisdom to know how to improve and use these relationships that you've given to us to glorify you. Heal us where we need healing, and please just hold our hands as we walk through this life. We thank you and pray in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Sisters of Light podcast. We hope that you've been blessed. Before you go, I'd like to let you know about a companion devotional book that I've written, which you can get at the Lineage Journey website, www.lineagejourney.com. I'd also like to let you know about companion books in the series, Sisters in Arms and As Bright as the Stars. If you'd like more information about us, you can find more of it on our website. And also, please don't forget to like and subscribe.